Hi, welcome back to Banter in the Yard. Like last time, I think we said we were going to be doing a top 10 video at least soon, and this is it. It's going to be our first proper video, which isn't the introduction one. And so this time we've made respective lists of our top 10 favorite characters from the series, and we don't know each other's lists, so that's sort of the fun of it. We don't know which each of us is going to say, so it'll go like I'll say my number 10, and then Bill will say his number 10.
Yeah,
we'll take sort of turns, and we'll have a few honorable mentions, and hopefully we'll be able to say a lot about each character. Well, not too much obviously, but hopefully we'll have a decent amount to say about each character and why we like them so much and why we picked them. So yeah,
his top 10 is almost as much of a surprise to me as it is to the people watching. Although, to be fair, I do have a rough idea of who he likes, but we just made our lists completely separately. So we're going to go through the top 10 list, and we'll just talk about them as we reveal them. So without further ado, we'll jump straight into it. So at number 10, Thomas, who have you got?
My number 10, and this was the one I said I threw in at the last minute, and I think this will surprise you. My number 10 is Percy.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
Why is that?
So I was thinking about it, and I feel like it's not out of obligation, but I do like him a lot without, like, even though I don't talk about him that much, I think about it. He stars in almost all my favourite episodes. My favourite episode of the series, he's the main character, a few others as well. So the first thing is he has great episodes: Ghost Train, Woolly Bear, Percy Takes the Plunge, Scarf for Percy. I'm just mentioning a few now, but he has a great sort of collection of episodes. Another thing is he has great crashes, great moments. He has a very strong personality. He has one of the strongest personalities in the whole thing, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you there. He's not my number 10 pick, but I will say he was my original favourite character way back when Thomas the Tank Engine was first, not when it was first brought into existence, because I wasn't alive then. 1990, so that's when I first saw it. It was 1990, and I was just a matter of months old, and straight away I connected with Percy the most. So at the time, he was my number 1 pick. As the years went on, I didn't like him as much, purely because I don't know, I didn't relate to him as much, but also when I sort of discovered his design wasn't exactly accurate to the model he's kind of based on. That kind of
that is a bit of that is the only thing that kind of puts him down a bit. And why I was debating if he should be in the list.
Yeah, I get why, but you have to understand they are still fictional characters. So while it is a legitimate reason, it's kind of also not at the same time. I do think, though, out of all of them, he kind of looks the most like a toy. But I think that is subconsciously because I know he's not he is based on a real life class, but he doesn't look like that class. The model you see in the TV show was basically modeled after the illustrations, because the illustrator, didn't get them to do them how Audrey wanted to, apparently. So I've read. You hear mixed things, but I will agree with you. Yeah, he is the star of some of the best episodes. Also, one of the main reasons I loved him is because of his crashes, and I think he has some of the best crashes in the whole thing. In fact, when I first started watching it, based on the episodes that I had, I noticed that he was the only one crashing. So when any other engine had a crash that wasn't Percy, I was shocked, because hang on, you can't crash. This is Percy's thing. But Percy and crashing is synonymous. Percy is synonymous with crashing, and he has definitely got some of the most standout episodes. But I went a different route. My number 10 pick was Mavis. Now, I will say now, a bit of a spoiler, she's the only female character on my list. And what's even stranger is Mavis wasn't necessarily a character I grew up with in terms of on the TV series, but I knew who she was on a lot of the merchandise. She was everywhere. But I didn't have any episodes with her in, because back then they came out on the VHS video cassettes, and he just had a random sort of mix of episodes. Like you had like each season was done in like I think they did it one season across 3 different videos or something like that. So I never had any, even though I had most of season 3, I didn't have any of the Mavis episodes in. So I'd never seen her, and I actually thought Mavis was a boy for the longest time. But I thought she had a really cool design. She's definitely one of the coolest looking diesel engines, and yeah, she's got a very nice design. And if I'm honest with you, my reason for her being my number 10, the main reason for her being my number 10 pick, is purely superficial, really. I don't dislike her personality by any means, but I will say that it is mostly because I think she has a good design. You know, I have to be honest there. It is a very superficial pick, but I like her design so much, you know, that landed her the number 10 spot for me. But she does have a good, out of all the female characters, she does have my favorite personality out of them. So, you know, I definitely think she's deserving of a spot on the list.
Yeah, I do. She's not one of my favorites, but I do like her. And I think she's probably my favorite of the female characters on the show. Yeah, like you said, she has a nice design. The side plates on it look really nice on a diesel, and I like the black and yellow stripes thing that Harry and Bert have as well. Yeah.
Also, there's something about, and you may notice a theme here. I like engines that look kind of realistic. She has a very realistic look. You know,
yeah.
Black Locos are one of my favorites in real life, and Mavis is a testament to that. She just has that very authentic kind of look. You can imagine seeing Mavis in real life a lot more than, say, some of the others, like Thomas, for example, who has a rather sort of garish kind of livery. I don't know. I've never been a big fan of the Northwestern Railway blue, but you know, Mavis just feels very sort of authentic in that sense.
Yeah, something I was going to mention with when we were talking about Percy is with a lot. You notice a lot of the earlier characters, a lot of like the first ones, they all look quite sort of inaccurate, and you notice later on they all look more sort of proper. The ones that are introduced later on look more realistic.
Yeah, and I noticed that as they brought in some one-off characters, they were much truer to the real-life counterparts than some of the early characters. I think that's because they were still kind of trying to establish their sort of designs, and I think at the time Audrey wasn't even sure what half of them were supposed to be. I mean, what's Edward? I've heard so many mixed things, and he doesn't look like any one class. So I think a couple of them do take inspiration from various classes, but Mavis is undoubtedly a class 04. With side plates and cow catchers, and I think she's a very standout character for that reason. Percy, on the other hand, is a little bit more kind of ambiguous, let's say. But anyway, so moving on, there's our number 9 spots.
So my number 9 is this is a bit of I was questioning again, should I put this one in, because as you'll know for obvious reasons now, he came in very late in the game. I'm sure you'll know who it is going off this, but my number 9, Spencer. He's a cool character to me because I like how he's essentially the better version of Gordon, making it cool dynamic there. Out of the season 6 and 7 ones, he's my favourite to be introduced. I think he was the most standout of them all, to me at least. And I liked him so much. I got the back one of him recently, which is a great model. So yeah. I think he's got a great design. The A4s, I really like the A4s. Really good personality as well. I like how he's like there's a steam engine who's a prominent antagonist. I think it's an interesting thing, rather than a diesel. So it's sort of a breath of fresh air. I just think it's a very sort of sleek design. I like his only episode in the classic series is a great one. One of my favourite ones from that sort of era. Yeah, 6 and 7. Sort of still the model seasons, but
still it's
from
classic,
6 and 7.
It's been debated.
Yeah, but from those 2 seasons, his episode with Gordon is probably one of my favourites. One of them, probably top 5, I'd say, from that sort of era. And another thing, talking about Gordon, I like how he brings out a better side in Gordon as well. You know, it's all the worst version. You see, Gordon's actually not that bad. So I like that.
Gordon only looks good compared to this guy.
Yeah, I like that. So I think he had a good voice as well. I think Michael Angelis gave him a great voice in the episode. Who cares? That sort of thing.
He was snobby sort of sounding, wasn't he?
Yeah. And yeah, I think I've said everything about him really. But yeah, despite coming in late in the game, I think he's a real standout, and I'm glad I put him in the list.
Well, I can't really say all that much about Spencer because he was past my time. But obviously, based on the fact that, I mean, I knew you liked him, but I will say that I see the appeal, but this is going to be a very controversial statement. I'm not very big on the A4s. Now, I'm not saying they're horrible by any stretch, but they never really did it. I prefer the sort of, I do like some weird steam engines, but that one, I always like the West Country class, the Southern Railway West Country class. That's an unusual looking engine, but what's that? Sorry.
The one that Rebecca's based on, the CGI car.
Yeah. But they absolutely butchered that class on such an ugly looking character. No offense to the CGI fans. We should probably establish we're not fans of the CGI. That was long after my time, and it was even after yours, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I do like some unusual steam engines. A4s aren't ones that really sort of resonate with me, but I still appreciate what he is as a character. Like Thomas said, he's that nice contrast. He's that character that kind of almost shows Gordon up to a point. And he does, like, in comparison, he does make Gordon look like a nicer character, personality-wise. But I honestly don't have all that much to say about Spencer because I don't really have any strong feelings one way or another. I don't dislike him, but I don't necessarily really like him. I can definitely see the appeal, especially if you like A4s. I will say they did a very good choice. They made a very good choice with his livery. I think that was it suits him, especially since he's very upper class and pompous. Although I think it's a little bit overkill that an A4 carries a single carriage around with him because he's privately owned. I'm sure what that's about. That must be.
He should be having an express train behind him.
Well, exactly, yeah, but he's privately owned, so I guess that's why. See, I love how I have to check my own list because I can't remember what I put. So I kind of surprised myself with my number 9 pick, but I went with Oliver. Now, yeah, I know is in the back of my mind. See, I've always said that it's weird. I never consider Oliver one of my favorites, but I don't know why I don't. He has a great design. He has some of my favorite episodes, and he's one of the most nostalgic characters because he came out. I remember when I had most of the season 3 across 2 videos, I think, VHS tapes. And I first saw him in Escape, which is my favorite episode of all time. I know it's cliche to say that, but bear in mind, I haven't really ventured into the fandom much, let's just say. And I had no idea that was one of the most popular episodes. But I have to say, it's always been my favorite. So it's nothing. I'm not jumping on any kind of bandwagon. It's always been one of my favorites. Was it my favorite because of Oliver? Partly it was, but he's not the main reason. But when I first saw him for the first time, and you just see that face in that sort of in that siding in the sort of the scrap, not the scrap yard. Where is it? I can't remember now.
It's like. They call it the other railway, so it's like on the other end.
Railway, yeah. I think it's just before the mainland, isn't it, or something? Or is it? Yeah. No, is it on the mainland? I can't remember. But I remember that site, seeing that for the first time, was really quite shocking for me. But I thought it was so cool and interesting. I was like, oh, who's this guy? I've never seen him before. And yeah, I really like that character. And I remember I got the little Ertl model of him, and I was ecstatic to get him. But it's weird because I was also obsessed with Toad as well at the time. Oliver, much like Percy, who I will admit is not on this list, but Oliver was one of those characters that I liked more back in the day. For a long time, I haven't really considered him to be one of my favourites, but then I thought about it, so I do like him. So I'm not sure why he just suddenly almost fell out of relevancy with me. But I guess I just haven't been paying attention because he is a very good character, and I do think he has one of the nicest designs, and one of the more accurate designs, I think, as in terms of the real life basis. So, yeah, for me, and he does have an interesting personality, but I think that could be where he falls a little bit flatter, because unlike some of the other characters on this list, he doesn't have as much of an established or clear personality. But then sometimes that can work in a character's favour, because he's not full of cliches. He's kind of his own thing. He's learning, he's trying hard, but he's not perfect, and I like that. But no one can forget his escape with Douglas. So yeah, for me, you know, I have to put him in my top 10.
Yeah, I like Oliver. I've always been more of a Duck guy. I gotta clarify, but I do like him. He's got a lot of good episodes, some good moments. I don't know, like you, I think he's one of those characters. He ticks a lot of the boxes, but weirdly, he's not one of my favourites. I'm not really sure why. I think I just prefer a lot of other characters over him. But yeah, he's got some good moments. He's a cool character. I'll say that. He has a very good design as well.
I think one of the things that really did it for me is the through 3 particular episodes he's in, which is Escape, Oliver Owns Up, and Toad Stands By.
Yeah,
I remember. Sorry.
Those are the 3 his like best ones.
Yeah, they are like 3 main ones. But I will say that when Toad Stands By came out, seeing Toad, because the Toad isn't on this list, so I'm not going to have a chance to talk about him. So I'll talk about him now. But Toad was a character I was fascinated with, but I'd never heard him speak before. So when I first saw him in Toad Stands By, we were cracking up at how he sounded, you know, because I don't think we were really familiar with his the Scouse accent back then. And yeah, we found it really, really funny. And just the whole episode with Way Paul Scruffy apart, we used to rewind that all the time because of how hilarious it was. So naturally, Oliver kind of does take me back to that time when we were just having one of the biggest laughing fits of our childhood. So yeah, I have to say that there's a lot of fond memories attached to Oliver. So I definitely think he's deserving of a spot on the list. So number 8, I have gone with Boko. Now, Boko is a character that everyone likes, you know, and it's not why I chose him. I didn't choose him because everyone likes him. I chose Boko because there is a nostalgic factor to him, especially since he never made it into the CGI. Now, I will admit, I was never big on CGI and I never really watched it. I've seen a couple of episodes just to give it a try, some of the more popular ones as well, so I know that if this is the best, then I'd hate to see the rest of it. But I will say that knowing that he wasn't in the CGI is kind of enough for me to sort of really sort of cement him as a real classic character. And what I love about Boko, and I think me and you can kind of both agree on this as well, is he had one of the best introductions. Yeah. His character reveal was great. But it's the expression on his face when you first see it, when Bill is coming down the line and, you know, it shows him from the tail end up to the front and he's got that face. There's something intimidating about him. And you think, okay, this guy's a bit dodgy. He's a diesel after all, because we naturally discriminate against diesels because the TV show told us to. But then it turns out that he's actually really sound. He was just he's misunderstood. So I really like that. And every appearance he's had since, although kind of scattered throughout the first 5 seasons, every appearance he had was interesting and significant and memorable in some way. And he does have an interesting design. I know diesels aren't as popular as steam engines, but I think the Class 28 is quite a nice looking diesel locomotive. But for me, he is definitely one of the characters on this list where it's more about his character than his appearance. Although I definitely like his appearance, I'm not disputing that. But I think the strongest thing about him is his personality.
Yeah, I feel like he's the closest thing we get to like a purely good person on the railway. Him and Edward, I guess. But yeah, he seems like the most sound out of them all, I'd say. I do really like him.
I do like how him and Edward have some kind of like clearly established friendship. I mean, they don't go into it too much, but there's obviously a level of respect there. They seem like this. They're almost like the 2 wise guys. Not in the gangster sense. I meant in the literal sense of the 2 sort of wiser characters on the railway. But the weird thing is based on age. Oh, hello, we've got company. Based on age, Boko would actually be one of the youngest characters, which I think is unusual because he comes across as one of the more mature ones. But I don't think they really do it like that. Like, for example, Thomas is definitely meant to be younger than Gordon, even though he's not. You know, so I think they kind of, each character has a predetermined personality. Like, they don't really grow up like, you know, we do. They kind of just have like a set personality for life. I'm not saying there's no character development, But I don't think the fact that Gordon is technically younger than Thomas has any relevance to it. You know, he's obviously supposed to be an older character in that sense, in like the personality sense. And I kind of get that feeling with Boko. So even though physically he would be one of the younger characters, he definitely seems one of the he'd be one of the elders in a sense. Do you know what I mean? Like he definitely has that sort of elder kind of vibe, you know, and everyone seems to respect him. And I love that even Gordon, one of the most pompous engines in the entire thing, just seems to end up respecting Boko because he realizes that, you know, he's an asset.
He's a stand-up guy.
He's a real stand-up guy. Yeah, that's a running joke, but yeah. So who did you go with?
It's funny, I'm actually glad you went first for this one because my number 8, I wouldn't even mention this, but my number 8 is like on a similar kind of thing, one that never came into the CGI. My number 8 is Duke.
Okay.
So Duke, starting off as a character, who's sort of very sort of close to home with me because obviously I live close to the Styniog Railway, where his basis is from. So you know I've got fond memories of that engine, and that whole railway. So yeah, he's very close to home for me at least, and I just think his whole backstory. I like how they take us back to another time to introduce him. I like that. I like how he's a bit like Edward and Boko. He's very sort of, he's wise, but he's authoritative. Like he's very authoritative, and he stands no nonsense. He likes his way.
Yeah.
I think he's very heroic as well. We see that on multiple occasions. The fact that he was in a shed for 20 years, not a peep when he comes out. He's just
Bill Leotardo.
yeah. But he's yeah, I really like him. I think he's got a very nice design as well. I'll just say he's my favorite narrow gauge engine.
Yes, I have to say I think there's a very good pick actually. It's definitely someone deserving to be on the list. I will just say this about Duke. I agree with everything you've said, and he's a very, very nostalgic character to me because at the time season 4 came out, he was one of the first really new characters. In fact, he was the first new character in the episode. I think the episode was You Can't Win. Grandpuff, believe it or not, was not the first episode on that video. It was You Can't Win. So that was the first memory I have of Duke, and straight away I fell in love with his design, and I thought he was just one of the most phenomenal looking engines I've seen. And I cannot begin to tell you like how crazy I went on the hunt for the little Ertl of Duke. And yeah, a character I'm very fond of myself. So that's a very good pick. And yeah, that's all I'll say for now. So moving on. So number 7. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, okay. Number 7, I went with Bill and Ben.
Okay.
So with them, it's weird. The two twins. Actually, no. Actually, I won't go into this because it'll just spoil something else. But I do really like them. I think the season 2 so nostalgic for me because that's the first one I ever saw. I just like how they show up. The clay pits. It's just great. They look better. They're some of like the nicest looking engines. I think they're sort of visually satisfying. I think they're very sort of quaint, and I love the way that they're introduced as well. Like how they go through. The narrator goes through all their little like details. Like I forgot what he said, but like the small squat cap that standed out to me. So those two and Boko, they had a great introduction in one episode. Yeah, and then obviously they continued in season 3. They got 2 good episodes there. Heroes always, I think I prefer that to One Good Turn. Because another thing I like their little dynamic with Gordon. I only see it once or twice, but I do like that how they managed to scare him. But yeah, and like you said before, they're quite sort of cute as well. There's something, yeah.
I don't know if this. Sorry, carry on.
They're just some of the nicest looking tank engines, I think, and I remember getting the toys of them as well. I think it was or something, but I remember getting the toys of them on Christmas. It was special because I've been watching the disease all over and over again, wanting to get them, and then I got them, and it was great.
I actually only had one of those. I had Bill, and my brother had Ben. Kind of fitting since my name is Bill. Yes, I have to say that they are visually one of the nicest engines, but I do have to say I prefer how they're portrayed on the TV series than their real life faces.
Yeah, same.
Because, yeah, if you've seen the real life face, it's what is it? Bagnall 040 tank engines called Arthur and Judy.
Alfred
and Judy,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very small and squashed. Bill and Ben look like what you would expect them to look like. You know, like almost a full-size, small but full-size tank engines, if that makes sense. Like full height for what they are. Right, the real-life versions are very squashed, and I don't like that. So I actually prefer the Bill and Ben take on those engines than the real-life ones, actually, which is unusual for me.
Yeah, they were drawn like that in the Railway series as well, as like squashed, which is a bit off-putting. But yeah, I like their liveries as well.
It was the eye mechanics at the time. They couldn't develop the eye mechanics for smaller scale engines. So in order to get the same eye movements as they had with the other characters, they decided to up the scale, and that's the Bill and Ben that we know today.
Disguise that.
What's that? Sorry.
There's a blessing in disguise with the eye movements.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Because in season 4 they managed it with the narrow gauge engines, but I think with Bill and Ben that was a good call, because not that it was done for that reason, but I think they definitely look better in that scale, because they're still small and cheeky looking in your own right, and like you said, there's definitely a cuteness about them, and I don't know if this was intentional, but it kind of looks like, well, I guess it wasn't because they're based off real life engines, but to me, with their faces and their long kind of buffer beam, it kind of looks like a baby wearing a bib.
Yeah.
They kind of look like babies wearing bibs, and I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, so I would definitely agree with you. That's a good pick. So I went with Henry for number 7.
I thought so.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't think he'd get higher than, I knew he'd be there, but I thought 7. That's where Henry would be.
Interesting. Yeah. See, Henry is a character that I really, really like for many reasons, but I want to put him higher. But the problem is, there's characters that I just like more. And that's the good thing about Tom. There's so many good characters, but I wanted to put him higher, but I just couldn't, because it means having to put these other ones lower. I think one of the best things about Henry is his design. I have to say, of all the big engines on the entire, railway on Sodor, Henry is the standout. I love Black Fives, and I even like his sort of experimental. What is it? An A1, some kind of experimental A1 in the early season. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's like a one-off. I even like that design. I love Henry for many reasons. Not just his design, but his design he's visually striking. They say he's almost as big as Gordon. No, he looks basically the same size, and if anything, he was actually a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
I could talk. The thing is, we're trying to make this semi sort of concise, but this video is probably going to go on for a little while, because I could talk for a long time about Henry, but I'll try to be as concise as possible. Condense it. I like the fact that, unlike Gordon, who is, kind of just your pompous, even I'm not saying that Gordon's badly written, I'm not suggesting that, but he is kind of, it's very obvious where they're going with Gordon. Whereas with Henry, it's kind of, he's a bit of an enigma. He's got very almost contrasting personality traits. So one could argue it's inconsistency, but I think it's a sign of a more complex character. He starts off, a lot of people say he started off weak. He didn't. He was a bad steamer. He just had, the coal didn't agree with him. Once he had the right coal, he was able to pull trains just like the best of engines. But then once after his rebuild, he didn't need the coal, and then he was stronger than ever before, even rivaling, possibly even, surpassing Gordon, who knows. But I would say that he is probably on par. So yeah, he had a very interesting arc. He's got a very interesting design, and I've always had a thing for physically strong, powerful characters, and Henry is that. So there's something more rugged about Henry over Gordon, because he's a freight. He's mixed traffic, but he does freight more than he does passenger trains, and I think there's something more sort of cool about that. I know a few other YouTubers have pointed this out in the past, but that shot in Fish where he pulls his big, heavy flying kipper train out of the station, or the harbour, sorry. I just thought that shot was so good because I've always been obsessed with the whole low angle thing, and I don't think there's ever a greater moment in the series that kind of illustrated that point of the sheer size and power of these things than when Henry was pulling that train out of the harbour. So yeah, there's lots I love about Henry, but his sheer might and power and just he's a very awe-inspiring character, and he definitely has my favourite design of all the bigger engines.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I really like Henry. Yeah, I think we'll move on now. But yeah, I like Henry a lot. I agree with a lot of the stuff you said. Yeah.
Number 6 for me is Duke. Now, what's interesting about that is Thomas had Duke in his list as well, and I did cover a fair bit, so I don't need to spend as long talking about him. But there's a few things I didn't mention, so I will just go into that now. Unlike Edward, Duke seems like an old character. I never bought Edward being an older character. To me, Duke looked old. He had an older face. Edward kind of looked like a girl to me, and I think you thought the same thing. Whereas, Duke looked like an older male character. Edward didn't, and so I could kind of buy that Duke was an older character. And I love the relationship he had with Falcon and Stuart, which I much prefer those names, by the way. I did not like their new names as much. Falcon and Stuart sounded so much better than Peter Sam's handle. But I love the relationship he had with them. He tells that great story about Smudger. And yeah, no, he has one of my favorite liveries in the entire thing as well. I love sort of the brownie, sort of orangey brown. Everything about him, just and also he's got the unique trait of being a tender tank engine. So that's something interesting. And I have to say, he's one of my favorite narrow gauge engines on the railway. So yeah, Duke is definitely a character worthy of being on this list, like all of them really, because I think we've got impeccable taste. But yeah, so for my number 6 spot, it was I decided to go with Duke for said reasons. Yourself?
Yeah, actually I covered a lot about Duke, but my number 6 is James. Now, about a year ago, he was probably at number 10, but I've come to realise he's a very good character because he's consistent. He's very... You never get him acting out of character, Even if Gordon's consistent throughout most of the season, you'll still get times where he's a bit sort of... He's not with the flow. And, Henry, Edward, all of them dipped at a certain point. Percy got turned into a baby. James was just always who he was,
Yeah. And he definitely has one of the more standout voices.
Yeah, Michael Andrews, the Scouse accent, yeah. Hello, Trevor.
Yeah, I don't care what anyone says. Only Michael Angelis can voice James. No one else comes close. I know there might be, if we're lucky, we might have a couple of Americans watching this. No disrespect, but it's all about the British narration. That's the original. That's the best. That's how these characters should sound. It's a British themed show. It should be. They should have voices like that. But James, even taking that point away, James just easily has one of the most standout voices. His voice is so identifiable.
Yeah.
He's just so iconic in his voice, and they tried mimicking that voice later with Percy, and it just didn't work.
No, but as well as that, he has one of the most, if not the most standout personality. And I like how he's the only red character in the main cast. He kind of breaks that kind of red and the blue and green kind of thing going on. So I like that. I like his theme as well. It's one of my favourites. And I think he has a good arc. Now I know most characters have an arc where they go from bottom to top. But I think another YouTuber pointed this out. He goes from being sort of nice, probably the second friendliest engine to Edward on the railway at that point, to being one of the worst. Like one of the biggest, he's not very nice, is he?
No.
Like season 3. He's petty.
He's got the schoolyard bully kind of feel to him.
Yeah.
He does have his qualities, but overall he just seems to be a rather unpleasant person, or character, should I say, engine.
And I'll talk about this now. I like his dynamic with Gordon. I think that's one of my favourite things about him. I like how Gordon seems to even though he's a bit irritated by them, he does genuinely seem to like him at times. He does like his efforts for trying to be like him. Not like, but he gets a bit of a kick out of it, and I like that. So, because obviously James, I think deep down he does look up to Gordon, no matter what he says.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
There's the jealousy aspect, but there's definitely that sort of reserved admiration. Like, he wants to be as good as Gordon, and the thing that pains him is that he knows he's not, and that grinds his gears, but he still doesn't stop him from trying to boast. But I've noticed that Gordon very quickly puts him in his place. And if one person's going to make James feel low, it's going to be Gordon.
Yeah, and I've noticed he sometimes goes for Henry as well.
Yeah, because Henry's got a softer demeanor than Gordon. But if there's one person that can keep tabs on James and put James in his place quite easily, it's normally Gordon.
I like how, like you mentioned before, he's a bit of a bully. He'll go for like Percy and Thomas. He'll try and belittle others to make himself feel better. But
sometimes they do come back with some good quips, and they kind of shut him up. Yeah. So I find that kind of amusing. He tries his hand at some of the other engines, and then sometimes they hit back, and he's left kind of speechless, and he just has that expression on his face. It's like, yeah, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, he's a very good character. One, I think he deserves to be on the list. Easily
the standout characters in the show, I'll admit.
Yeah, he's a great character.
Okay, so for number 5, we'll do something a bit different, because Thomas thinks I've chosen the same as him. So I'm going to say mine, and then you say yours, and then we'll talk about our respective characters, if they are different or if they're the same. Or we can just talk, if it's the same character, we can just talk about him together. So, so for number 5, I went with Diesel.
Same. Yeah, I knew it.
Oh my God! See, I genuinely had no idea what his pick was.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you guessed that based on what you know my others are going to be.
Yeah, because I knew out of that kind of bunch you say like your top favourites, I knew he was just outside of that.
That's interesting. You got that. So well, that makes this a little bit easier then. So we can both kind of talk about Diesel together without having to talk about another character. So I think Diesel is easily one of the best characters in the whole thing. Now, Diesel could have been higher. In fact, I almost put him ahead of my next one. I almost did. And in some ways, I don't know why I did. I really don't know. But Diesel has stood out to me from day one. Straight away you see him, he's got that presence, he's got that look, he looks wicked. You know, in the literal sense, he's just got that wicked face. He's the Dick Dastardly of Thomas the Tank Engine characters. You know, he's got the black livery, you know, he literally looks just like what he's supposed to be. So an 08 shunter. And he's just got that Mike, I know Ringo Starr voiced him first, but Michael Angelis does the perfect voice from it. It's nasally, it's sneaky, he just sounds like really weaselly. So in my book, no one comes close to Michael Angelis, his voice for Diesel. Everything about him is good. He has some of my favourite episodes. My favourite Diesel episode is actually Diesel Does It Again. Now, that's not the most popular Diesel episode I know, but I think it was the first one I saw. Actually, it was the first one I saw where he was a main character, so not including Tender Engines, which I will get to in a minute, because actually, no, I'll talk about that now. He had a great little bit in Tender Engines. I think you feel the same about that, don't you? Which this will be a topic we'll talk about when we're doing our top 10 episodes list. But I will just say that little interaction in Tender Engines, that went a long way. He's used to great effect in the first few seasons, and just the way he was used in that episode it was perfect. It was flawless. His default face, that sort of, you know, that scowly face, you know, where he's smiling, you know, the first face you ever see him with in the what's the episode called, where we meet Duck for the first time. What's it called? Pop Goes the Diesel. Yeah, that face he has, that's like his ultimate main face. Everyone knows the Diesel face. So I never understand why Bachmann, the model company, didn't use that face for their model, because that is one of the best faces in the entire franchise. And just, you look at Diesel and even to this day, when someone says the word bad guy or villain, I picture Diesel. I don't picture someone else. Even as an adult, I picture Diesel ahead of all these other villains that I love, because that is where I became familiar with the term baddie, was through Diesel. He was the first villain I knew in anything, and he is the epitome of that, with his face and his livery, and his personality and his voice. He is a perfect character. Now, I don't think I've said that about anyone else on this list, but Diesel is just a perfect character in every conceivable way. I absolutely love him, and I almost regret not putting him one higher, but we'll talk about that when I talk about the next one. But
yeah, so one thing I've got to mention is he has one of the best themes of the whole thing. That theme, when I just think of the word Sly. You just think of some little guy crawling around, he's about to cause some trouble, you know?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's got that snaky, almost snake charmery kind of sound to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it reminds me of sorry.
No, go on. I was going to change the topic to something else, so...
Oh, okay. No, I was just going to say it does have that kind of almost like snake charmer kind of sound to it, but also, what's that instrument called? You know, when you hit the ball and it does that, what's that called? You hear it in the Diesel theme. So whenever I hear that sound now, I can't think of what the instrument is called. It's like a wooden block, and it has like a metal wire with a ball on it, and you hit it and it makes that sort of rattly sort of noise.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So if anyone is actually watching this, leave that in the comment what that instrument is called, because I can't even think of what that is. But I just have an early memory of them from growing up. I remember, like, whenever we did music class, they were always there, and that sound is in the I'm assuming that's what they used, is in the Diesel theme, and it just fits in perfectly. So even now, if I ever hear that sound, my mind goes straight to Diesel. Oh, and I only call him Diesel. I hate the whole devious Diesel thing, which was coined with the CGI series. I don't like that at all. It is just Diesel. A lot of people say, why doesn't Diesel have a name? He does. His name is Diesel. Like, and people will often say, well, other Diesels are called Diesel. No, they're not. They're the ones without the names. This character is actually called Diesel, because at the time he was the only one. Also, it's more fitting with him because he's black, you know, he is the original Diesel. That is his name. There's no devious, it is just Diesel. People just added that later. He was only ever intended to be called Diesel. But yeah, I've said Diesel a lot in the past 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think the episode Dirty Work really shows what he's all about. I love the scene where he's going through the yard with the trucks on either side rows of him, and his eyes are just moving either way.
Yeah.
Just the word.
It's just one of those perfectly cinematic moments. That is just him to a T. Everything. Same with Diesel does it again. That image of him when he's got that real sulky looking face on, and he's pulling that train in the harbour, and he's going slowly. And I just can't remember, but Michael Angelis is narrating, and he says something like, everyone was delayed, there's a mess everywhere, etc., etc. And Diesel just looks like he can almost hear what he's saying, but he just doesn't care. I don't know why, but that's how I've always sort of interpreted it, and I just think it's great. I think, you know, the whole image of Diesel is just perfect, and he is definitely top 3 character worthy. Easily, I think he's if I'm being objective, I would say Diesel is easily a contender for the top spot of the best character in the series, and I mean that sincerely. Yeah,
I think we've covered everything to do with him, but
I think I got a bit excited with that one, but I kind of went off on one there. But yeah, I like Diesel. If you can figure out why he wasn't higher in the list is a mystery to me.
Yeah, one more thing, he clears Diesel 10. Much better villain.
Oh my God, are you really going to open up this can of worms now? I finally shut up, and now we're doing this. Okay, we've gone there, so I'm going to go there. Yes, he does. When people say that this imposter of a Diesel character, who admittedly has a nice design, he's based off the warship? What's it called? The class? Is it 55?
42, I think.
Oh, the 42. I can't remember. My brain. I told you, my brain's gone. Yeah. Okay. It was the warship or something. Obviously, minus the claw. Or with, should I say, with the addition of the claw. he's an interesting character, but he doesn't come close to Diesel. And when I say Diesel 10 is an interesting character, I mean on aesthetics alone, because everything else about that character is atrocious. He was from an atrocious film with an atrocious voice. Sorry if I offend anyone that likes that version of him, but I hate him. I like the look of Diesel 10. That's it. He doesn't come close to the original bad guy, which is Diesel. Diesel is perfect, and you know, he doesn't even deserve to be compared to him. A bit of hatred coming out there. Sorry. Right. So number 4. I feel like I've been talking for ages. Yeah, I have been. My number 4. I'm going to try to keep this one short. But my number 4 is Duck. He nearly came at number 5. At one point, he was even my number 1. Thomas the Tank Engine is the one franchise where my number 1 is never clear, but this is kind of more, I'm kind of trying to be objective as possible, but this is where I'm at with it at the moment. And it's not because I think Duck is far worse than the next characters. It's purely because they're so close. Like, I could have easily I would be cheating if I said the next 5 characters, or sorry, the next 4 characters are all my joint favorite. I had to arrange them somewhere, and I decided to put Duck at number 4. Duck, everyone loves Duck, and that's not the reason I like him. I like him because he has one of the nicest designs. I always found, because I know weirdly enough, he's actually one of the more common tank engines of the time, and he's actually a very sort of iconic looking real life tank engine. Why have I forgotten this class already? I know this. What's that story?
Pannier tank.
Yeah, he's a pannier tank, but what's his actual class? I've completely forgotten. It's a
D7 double F.
Yeah, that's it. I think I can't remember. Something I know so well, but I've completely forgotten. My memory is not what it was, evidently. But anyway, he's got a great personality, and he's one of the characters that I personally related to the most. See, I'm one of those people that tends to keep to themselves, but when someone rattles me, it is off. The gloves are off. It's game on, and that's Duck in a nutshell, and that's what I love about him. Stand out. Do you know what my favorite Duck episode is? And I don't want to get too involved in the episodes here again, because we want to save that. But my favorite episode of Duck isn't even about Duck as such, and that's Tender Engines. It's just Duck at his best. He's just winding everyone up, because I love how he's the serious, sensible character who works hard, but he's not above pranks or winding people up or just being a smart aleck, and I love that. So yeah, Duck, I could go on about Duck, but I need to save time because I already went on about Diesel way too much. So it was very close with Duck and Diesel, but I think that Duck maybe just edges him, because I feel like I don't relate to Diesel, I relate to Duck, and that relatability just won him over. And I can't remember who said this off the top of my head, but I know in another video someone did point out that Duck and Diesel are not just opposites in terms of enemies in the actual episode itself, but they're also they kind of represent each other. Whereas, because Diesel is like the modern day version of what Duck was, the most mass-produced tank engine of the time, whereas Diesel was the most mass-produced diesel shunter of the time. So
Unlucky Tug said that.
Huh?
It was Unlucky Tug who said that, I think.
Was it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I honestly couldn't remember. I watched a lot of videos. Well, I have done over the past year or two anyway. So yeah, credit to him for saying that. But I think he's pretty spot on there, because they do have. I don't know if that was intentional, if they deliberately intended on doing that, but it works, and they contrast each other nicely. However, here's the interesting thing: even though Duck was one of the most popular tank engines ever, when I was a kid and I saw Duck for this first time, I said, wow, what is that? Because that was not, I pictured a tank engine being like Thomas or Oliver. That's what I had in my head when someone said tank engine. Duck is not what I pictured at all. The Duck had an unusual sort of, that square kind of thing. And at the time, that was the unconventional look for a tank engine to me at the time. I saw Thomas and Oliver as kind of like the more textbook sort of tank engine type characters. So Duck was a real, niche character for me back then, because he broke the mold in a sense. I guess in a literal sense as well, because he had quite a literally he quite literally had an interesting shape that I wasn't familiar with. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Duck. I said I was going to keep it short, and evidently I'm a liar. So Thomas, do you want to tell me yours?
Number 4, I went with Henry. I think he's iconic, isn't he? He's one of the first characters. I think a lot of people outside the fandom know about him as well, getting bricked up in the tunnel. But I'm not actually big on that episode. But
No, I don't like Henry being no pun intended. I don't like Henry being put in that box.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually. I heard that after I said it. Like when he's associated with illness or being in a tunnel, I think there's so much more to him than those two things, you know. But anyway, carry on. Sorry, I interrupted again.
I think he's got that brilliant. The backstory is great, very in depth. He's got a great arc in season 1. I like how he carries on after that. He's sympathetic. Probably the most sympathetic character you see. He's put through all these situations. I like the dynamic he has with Gordon and James, and I like how they actually make him look like he's obviously the most decent out of the 3 of them. They make him look good.
At the big engines, even though James isn't actually any bigger than Edward.
Yeah, but yeah, I think he's layered. I like how Henry's Forest added another layer to him. I know everyone says that, but I like that. Yeah, I just think I relate to him as well. I feel being that kind of like quieter, you know, on the outskirts, kind of quiet, but then some things can easily sort of irritate me, like him. So yeah, like I like him a lot. But he does get overshadowed, for me at least, even though he's quite high up. He tends to get overshadowed by another character who mirrors him, who is, who's more high up than this. But so he tends to get overshadowed a bit. Which
I think we can all guess who that is.
Yeah.
I'm not really going to add to what he said about Henry because I already gave a big speech about him. So I will move on to the number 3 spot. Do you want to start with yours?
So for number 3, I went with Donald and Douglas. So I think straight away they're some of the most nostalgic characters being season 2. They stand out immediately. But they have great. They don't technically have a great introduction because it was cut short what it was supposed to be.
I'm just going to interject here quickly. Sorry to take over. I'm not going to talk about that today because if I did, we can save that for another video. If I did, we'd be here all day. So carry on. Yeah,
but you know, I do like Break Van. I think it's a good episode. Out of the 2 of them, I think I prefer Douglas, which is another thing. They work good as separate characters. As you see in season 3, they're separated throughout most of it. They have great designs, some of the best. And it was a very wise choice to keep them black because if they were blue, they wouldn't stood out as much.
With you there, 100%.
Yeah. So I just think they're great characters. Obviously, they work well separately, but they have great moments. They're nostalgic to me. I like how they're Scottish as well. It makes them stand out with their voices. That's all I really got to say because I know they'll get talked about more. But
don't let me stop you.
But yeah, that's all I really got to say about them. They're just really strong characters. Another thing, I don't think I've ever seen anyone fault them.
No, I think they're universally loved, and it's a weird thing actually because normally I'm the kind of guy that does let the popularity of something deter me a little bit. But when it comes to Tom's characters, it doesn't really so much. You know, they are great characters, but. I agree with you, Bill and Ben. Donald and Douglas are great, and visually they're some of the most standout characters in the entire thing as well. Great. I love their real life bases, etc. But I'm going to move on to my number 3 pick, and I went with weirdly Bill and Ben, who are obviously twins as well, but I covered most of what I already want to say. Well, you went on about Bill and Ben more at the time, but I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet this time. And I know every time I say that I lie, but I'm trying to be honest here. I love Bill and Ben because I think the best way to describe them is they're in a league of their own. You've got. I love how even like you mentioned earlier, even like these big engines can't seem to fully get control. Like that's why I love Boko, because Boko and Edward are the only characters that can actually control these twins. And the twins tend to respect. Like, it reminds me a little bit like when Gordon meets them and they threaten to push him in the sea. It reminds me a little bit of when some big tough guy bully or some feared mob figure or something from, I don't know, another piece of fiction comes to like a country setting. I don't want to make this about another thing, but I don't know. It kind of, this is a very poor analogy, but I don't want to make it about Red Dead Redemption. But in Red Dead Redemption, they deal with this mob. I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't played it, but there's this mob figure in it. But when the mob guy is in sort of, cowboy territory, he's nothing. And that's kind of what I felt about Gordon with Bill and Ben. Like, yeah, you're a big shot on the main line, but when you're on the sidings, in the harbour, this is Bill and Ben's turf, and they totally go proper mafioso on him, threaten to dump him in the sea. And even that scares Gordon. Bill and Ben aren't these engines that care about size or speed or anything like that. So you can't threaten them with those kind of things. You can boast about your achievements and your capabilities, but at the end of the day, they do different kind of work, and that's all they know. So you come down on their line with that kind of pompous attitude, and you're gonna get a death threat essentially. And also, I think the other thing is about Bill and Ben that I love is they are hard workers. They cause so many problems. They're little terrors. They're cheeky and they are lovable in their own way, but the way they riff off each other, it's hard to get one up on them because there's always two of them. It's not just say Ben or Bill on his own and you've got one engine to contend with. If an engine goes up against Bill and Ben, he's got the pair of them to deal with. And they've always got that dominant energy in the sense that, they've got that moral support from the other one. And that's why twins are kind of hard to one up, and I find. But despite all their flaws, they're good workers and they do learn and they do progress. And, and what they do well. And I like that about them. They're not just good characters. I think they're actually quite respectable engines as well. So, yeah, big fan of Bill and Ben. At one point, I would argue they were at the top spot. Also, I got a Hornby model of Bill. Now, I couldn't decide which Hornby model to get at the time. This is years and years ago when I was a little kid. And I nearly bought the Hornby Diesel. I looked at the Bill and he just looked better. And I thought, I've got to get him. So I got him. So he's like, I've only got two Hornby models of Thomas characters. The other one being Toby, which is a little bit weird because Toby is not even close to being one of my favorites. He's not in this list, spoiler alert. But Bill stood out to me. And so for that reason, they're definitely two of my favorite characters. Well, Bill and Ben are two of my favorite characters. But yeah, I guess that's all I can say about them without going on for another 10 hours. So I think we should move on to our number twos.
Should I take this one?
Yeah, go for it. I'm tired of my own voice.
Okay, so for number two, I went with Duck. And I think you probably saw this coming, but there was a while where he used to be my favourite, but another character kind of topped him at one point, so he's still a solid. What?
I said he's always battling the top spot with this other character.
Yeah, but the other one usually pretty much is always at the top, so the Duck's a solid number two. I've always liked him, like you said before. He has a sort of standout design with the square tank. He's different, and I like that. I think he's the nicest looking tank engine.
Oh yeah.
I think it's weird because a lot of people say the characters with the most standout personalities are the best, but like you said before, it feels kind of realistic when you have ones who don't have such standout personalities. They feel more like real people, because not everyone in the real world are these sort of like caricature kind of cut out characters like Gordon's and James's. You've got like someone like Duck, he feels very real. A lot of the stuff he says, how he acts, he feels real, like a real person. He's witty, I like that. Like you said before, he does his work. He he's by the book, but then he's not above playing pranks and stuff. Like I've always said, he's a sensible prankster. He's sensible, but he still has fun. He knows he feels like, I don't know, not like the leader of the gang, but that one guy who's always there.
Mm.
Always there, always in on the jokes, especially when he pranks Henry as well with the tenders.
Yeah, like
he leads a lot of the banter.
That's it. And even though he was initially portrayed as a sensible character, I still like the fact that he's not so up himself. He's above playing jokes. He's still one of the guys, right? But but when push comes to shove, he's a hard worker and he's sensible. And normally when he's playing pranks on someone, it's because they deserve it. Like, he doesn't just play pranks for the sake of it. It's normally like a revenge thing, or like, he puts them in he's putting them in their place. He shows them up for what they are. He's not just outright pranking engines. That's another thing I like about him.
Yeah. No, I think he's great. He's, like I said before, he's witty. He knows how to get under all of their skins, but not in like a Bill and Ben way. He still does it in like almost like a sensible way. Like he never crosses the line.
Yeah.
Like he's always just kind of underlying about it.
That's exactly what I meant, because he never instigates it. Like, if you think about it, even in Tender Engines, which I referenced earlier, when he starts off at Gordon was already being like, quite problematic from what I remember. Gordon had a bad attitude, and Duck kind of took advantage of that, and he kind of exploited him. He just kind of like, it's like he's holding a mirror up to these other engines and saying, this is how ridiculous you are. So it's never spiteful pranks. It's just like, I think he helps them learn a lesson, but he does it by being funny, which is good.
What I like about him is, again, it's not like a moral code, but it's kind of like, if you do something to me, I'll do something back. So it's like, even all they have to do something tiny to annoy him, and he'll hit him back 100 times harder. Like they have to light a match, and he'll throw gasoline on it. Like,
yeah, exactly. I love that as well.
He's heroic as well. He's in like a close shave and all at sea, even though like they made a big deal about some guy hurting his hand. I assume he's meant to
that in our episode thing, because I find that hilarious. We don't know the nature of the injury, but I always thought the man hurting his hand sounded a little bit like trivial. He gets flown in from a helicopter because he hurt his hand. Like, unless his hand was completely mangled or something, what were they doing? What happened? How did he hurt his hand? Like, what? I don't know. It just seemed like a very lazy description. A man has hurt his hand. It's something underwhelming about it. But anyway, sorry, I digress.
Yeah, but he just feels like that one guy like everyone would like. They'd all be like, oh, it's Duck, he's a good guy. All the engines would like him. He'd show up, they'd be like, oh, it's Duck, he's alright, he can come to the shed tonight, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing I will add, which I don't think we've mentioned, I like this almost unofficial trio of Boko, Duck, and Edward. 3 guys that respect each other, and they have like this, I don't know, almost like this I don't want to say this, I don't want to resort to these juvenile kind of sayings, but I guess I'm going to do it because I've got no other way of describing it, but they've almost got this kind of bro code kind of thing, I feel. I can't believe I resorted to that, but I couldn't think of what else to say, and I guess that will resonate with some people. I don't know, this is just something I picked up on, the Duck, Boko, and Edward. They're the 3 stand-up guys of the railway, and they stand up for the little guy. They've all got like when there's some kind of injustice going on, they will get involved and they'll be like, hey, what are you doing? But not in a pointless, nosy way, in a way that is usually justified, which is why I like them. So, I do like that kind of trio for that reason. Yeah. Unofficial trio, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think I've covered everything about him, or most things, but great character.
Number 2, right?
Yeah, number 2, easily my second favourite. So, I guess we'll move on to you.
My number 2 is, I said earlier when I talked about Duke that he is one of my favourite narrow gauge engines. There is one that surpasses him, and he could have been my number 1 spot, but someone else just took it. This, even though I said I relate to Duck the most, this character in particular is my unpleasant side, and that's Duncan. I think Duncan is the best narrow gauge character, hands down. And remember, everything we say about these characters, we are not even referencing CGI. Okay, so CGI doesn't exist as far as we're concerned when we do these lists. So we're not gonna a character isn't gonna lose points because the CGI version of them is bad. Because as far as we're concerned, CGI doesn't exist. We really want to establish that. Duncan is just he's such a grumpy little bugger, but he's so likable. He's the kind of guy that underneath all that rough exterior, he's still actually pretty decent. He's not just like, in contrast, someone like Sir Handel, he doesn't seem as gruff as Duncan, but I don't feel like Sir Handel is underneath it all is as nice a guy as Duncan is. Like Duncan is outwardly a grumpy son of a gun, but he's actually pretty decent, and like they kind of suggest in his first episode, he means well. And I kind of get that impression as well. And when he thinks when he's made a mistake and he realizes he's made a mistake, he does apologize. One of the main reasons I like him, apart from his great design, he has one of the best designs in the whole thing, I think. But I think he's just so damn funny. He just has so many funny moments. He just doesn't care. And you know, in the Audrey books, it suggests that he swears a lot, and I just think that's so fitting of him. He seems like the kind of guy that would. Michael Angelis does a great voice for him. I think he has one of the best voices in the entire thing. He's just so likable. He's just I don't know why, but I kind of get the impression he's an older guy. Like if he was not an older guy, but if he was a guy in you know, a person in real life, he would be in his 50s or 60s. So he's not old, but he's an older guy, you know. And that's the kind of persona that I get from him. You know, he's a bit grumbly, but he's a great character, and he has some of the best faces. Like straight away when I think of Duncan, I think of his neutral frowny face, you know, his standard one. And yeah, I know I'm not going too into this about, you know, his personality or his episodes, because again, I make this way too long as it is, but he does have some great episodes as well. Weirdly enough, I can't actually think of any episodes of his that are some of my favorites. I don't even know if any Duncan episodes are my favorites. He's just an ongoing, consistently good character whenever he's in it, and for that reason, he is at my number 2. And he is definitely somewhat reminiscent of my less pleasant side, let's say, shall we say. So yeah, that's my number 2.
So we'll run through the honourable mentions now, ones that almost cut the list, but for reasons they didn't.
One considered, yes. We got 4 honourable mentions each, and we won't go heavily into each one like we did. We'll, you know, spend a few seconds on each, because obviously this video has been rather long.
Okay, so I'll run through mine. So my first one is Edward. Now, it's weird with him because he's got a nice design. I think even though he's not based on something real, his design's nice. He's got, in season 2, which is my favourite season, he's got a good sort of presence about him. He's a constant. He's always doing something good there. I think that's easily his standout season, because he doesn't really do anything in any of the others. But yeah, he falls short because, you know, he's very sort of, he hasn't got the strong, he doesn't have a lot going for him, and I feel he is overrated. Gotta put it out there. I think he's a bit overrated.
I agree there, I have to say.
But he's... go on.
No, I was just going to say, I like him more from a nostalgia point of view than an objective point of view. I believe that Edward, after Percy, was the second Ertl I ever got. And I got that when I was in hospital. And I always liked the character's design and look and everything, but if you asked me at the time, what's your favorite Edward episode, I would have gone blank. Like, I couldn't remember. And I don't think at the time, when I was little, I didn't really have many Edward episodes. I think the episode I remembered him from most, and this shows how sort of almost irrelevant he was to me in terms of his appearances, was when you see him in Percy's Promise, and he warns him of a storm. That's the most prominent memory I had of him in childhood. He's quite a nice looking character, but as I mentioned earlier, his technical basis isn't even clear. So yeah, he's definitely not an honourable mention for me. I just thought I'd weigh in on yours. Would you say that's all on Edward?
Yeah, I'd say that's all.
Yeah. So,
So my second one, or should I go through all mine and you do all yours, or should we do one each?
I was going to do mine. I was
Yeah,
going to do.
okay.
We can alternate a little bit if you're happy with that. You can tell these videos aren't scripted, but that was the whole idea. Nothing there's no planning in these videos, which is why they're a mess. But we hope that people enjoy the somewhat more authentic kind of conversations. So but then you get these funny little moments like this where we just kind of interrupt each other. We don't even know what we're doing. Um, they're not professional by any measure, but we do it for the conversation and the more than anything else. Anyway, so my first honourable mention is Sir Handel. Now, as I mentioned with Duncan earlier, he's kind of also a little somewhat unpleasant character, but he's not as bad, but he kind of seems worse at the same time. I don't know why. He's not outwardly as aggressive, but he actually seems more mean-spirited, and he kind of seems more like I don't know, like he doesn't seem as caring as Duncan underneath it all. And I think that Sir Handel is an interesting character, which is why he's an honourable mention. He's definitely one of my favourite narrow gauge engines when I was a kid. And I'd probably say at the time when I was little, I probably liked Sir Handel better than Duncan, but he looks really nice as well. And he's in some great episodes. Steamroller being a standout. That's all I'm going to say, because these are just honourable mentions after all.
Yeah. So my second honourable mention is Boko. Now, I do like him a lot, but I felt he couldn't quite cut the list for me. It's a lot of the stuff we were saying before. He's got a respectable personality. He's a great person out of them all. He's got a cool design, and his introduction's great. So, yeah, that's all I really. It's running through the points. That's really what I got to say about him. He didn't quite cut the list, but I thought I'd give him a mention because he's a character I like.
And to be fair, I think most of what you already think about Boko, I've pretty much mentioned,
Yeah.
But yeah,
I like the dynamic he has with Gordon as well. Even as in one scene, I do like it. So thought I'd mention that.
Oh, Wrong Road. Yeah, that's what I was mentioning earlier. Hence the Gordon respecting Boko. I thought that was good as well. Although he is kind of slagging him off at the start.
Yeah.
He says, I can't remember, he says something detrimental about Boko, and then at the end he's like, Boko, save me. It's like, all right, mate. But then he does seem to respect him after that, which I thought was quite cool. So my next one is Derek. He's only in one episode, which is why I can justify putting him on the list. Honestly, he's one of my favorite real life diesel engines, the Class 17. The character has the BR green, which I think is beautiful. Like, this is when they started making one-off characters look more like real engines, and I love how you can't quite figure him out. He's got a bit of a diesel face, actually, as in the character Diesel. He's got that sort of sneaky face, like when he comes along and he goes, hello, we'll sort this train out. I thought there's going to be something to him. I thought he's going to be a little bit dodgy, but he actually turns out to be a sound guy. And I like that, I like the fact he's one of Michelangelo's more unique kind of voices, because he's got quite a posh upper class kind of accent, which is interesting. Despite everything, he did try hard, even though he failed. He failed not because he didn't try, he failed because he was a poorly built engine. And I like to think that after he went to the works, he was he was working effectively after that. But yeah, so that's my second honourable mention. Who's yours?
So remember I said there was two that for the exact same reasons, and I put them together. They're literally the same reasons. I thought I'd just talk about them together.
Okay.
It's Duncan and Sir Handel. You've mentioned the both of them.
Right.
So Sir Handel, when I was a kid, was my favourite narrow gauge one, because he was blue and he was my favourite character. I guess I always just saw him as like the miniature Gordon, so I like that. But both of them have nice designs, standout moments, standout episodes, standout personalities. Just thought I'd talk about them together. Yeah, they're good. Again, they didn't cut my list, but I thought I'd give them a mention because I do like them both. So yeah.
I think that's the difficult thing about Thomas, is there's a lot of good characters, and it is kind of hard to narrow them down. So my next one is Smudger. Now, I'm not going to talk about this for ages. Again, much like Derek, he's only one episode, and he was hardly in the episode he was in. I was fascinated with him when I was younger. He's just this unruly. He's like an even worse version of Duncan and Sir Handel. He's like Sir Handel's and Duncan's. Weirdly, it goes hand in hand with your last honourable mentions. He's kind of like a combination of this. This was unplanned, remember, so it's just a funny coincidence. But he's kind of like their worst traits combined. I've noticed, Smudger. But he's a bit of an enigma. There's this whole story of this engine that disobeyed so much he literally basically was turned into something else, which, when you think about it, he must have, if that story was true, he must be dead, because that area got covered in mud and whatnot, and landslides, and yeah, so he got buried alive ultimately, and which is pretty dark, but we know Thomas isn't afraid to go there. Yeah, no, that's all I can say about Smudger. I really liked him, and I did have the Ertl. In fact, I went on the hunt for the Ertl, little Ertl model of him, when I didn't even know one existed. So it was a fluke that there was such thing as one, and yeah, I ended up getting that. And he's a great character in design, and what little screen time he has was memorable. So my other, since you've said your last two, my other honourable mention is Murdoch. Now, Murdoch has one of the nicest designs in the later era. Season 6 and season 7. He's an F9, isn't he, or 9F or F9? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, 9F.
9F. See, my brain is gone. I told you, my memory is going. I like how you would expect him to have a rivalry with Gordon, but they just didn't touch upon that at all. I thought that was kind of strange. If
someone should get to that, shouldn't they?
Yeah, if Spencer rivals Gordon in speed, Murdoch rivals Gordon in strength. Because let's face it, Murdoch outclasses everyone in strength, and I like that. But I like how weirdly they had this really strong character that wasn't smug about it. He was just straight up, didn't care. He just wanted to be left alone. He wanted, he wanted solitude ultimately. So he didn't. Unlike most engines that are good at something, there's no bragging with him. He just was good, and that was it. And yeah. So that's my honourable mention list. That's all of yours as well, isn't it? Yeah. So 4 honourable mentions each, a little bit more than you'd expect, but we wanted to cover a few more characters because there's so many good ones. So who's your number one?
My number one. You knew this was coming. It's got to be Stepney, hasn't it? I mean, look at him, the best. No, I'm joking. It's not Stepney, no.
Watch the introduction video, you'd know that we always make fun of Stepney.
Yeah, so really, my number one, you knew this was coming, is Gordon. I think I've talked about him so much throughout the video with other characters. I think everyone probably knew this was coming. Because I mentioned with Sir Handel, I liked him because he was almost like a smaller Gordon. That just gave it away. But yeah, straight away, he's just visually impressive and iconic, isn't he? Everyone knows him. Everyone who knows the series knows him. I'm pretty sure. He has my favourite face of the series. I'm sure you'd agree. He has a very standout face. Instantly,
yeah,
you can tell who he is by that face.
His main face is just extremely iconic.
Yeah, he's got some brilliant episodes. I think Off the Rails, Gordon and the Famous Visitor. There's a few to mention. I even like Trouble with Mud because of him. Even if he's inconsistent in that, I do like that episode because there's a good dynamic between him and James. Which leads me to another thing. He's got a dynamic with almost every character. He has some kind of interaction with. You notice, except for Toby, I think. I think Toby and Mavis are the only ones he never talks to. Other than that, I think and the narrow gauge ones, some of them, but he's talked to he's had an interaction with most characters, and I like that.
Has Gordon not spoken to Toby?
I don't think he has, no. At least not in the classic seasons. You'd think that would happen. Yeah.
See, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
You'd think they'd do something with that as well, seeing as they're complete opposites.
Yeah. That is weird.
Yeah. But he
I'm actually quite surprised by that.
Yeah. He's got some obviously great quotes, never trust domeless engines, what's this, educating Gordon Day, many. He's got some great moments as well, like when he falls in the ditch, when his dome comes off. I can't think of a lot from the top of my head, but saving Thomas from the mine, all sorts of stuff. He's which leads me to another thing, like you were saying about Duncan. He seems sort of self-important and everything on the exterior, but inside he does seem like a good guy. You know, at heart he seems, well, not actually at heart because he's an engine, but he seems,
yeah,
he seems he's a good guy below it all. So yeah, I like him for that. He's even though he comes across as one of the worst of them all, he's still looking out for them all, I guess. He still likes everyone, I suppose, even though he doesn't show it. He just takes his responsibilities seriously, I guess. But he's got some great moments, like the one we like at the beginning of Time for Trouble.
I have to say that's my favourite Gordon moment in the entire thing. It's not even his episode, where he's thundering down the line, his theme's playing like in full. And he's saying, come on, to the coaches. And he's just got that furious sort of expression on his face. That, to me, is pinnacle Gordon. And that is literally my favourite Gordon moment in the entire thing. And I will say now, Gordon is not my number one character. He didn't even make my top 10. But I do have a big appreciation for him as a character. And I think I do more so since talking to Thomas, because I know, when he likes something, he talks about it passionately. I kind of get it a little bit more, because I will admit I was one of those people that for a long time thought Gordon was overrated, but I do agree with you. He's definitely one of the strongest characters, not just physically. I mean, like writing, in terms of writing. He's definitely one of the strongest characters in the series. And he's big engine, big personality. He could have been hollow and superficial, but he's not. He's got quite a lot to him. And again, I think most people that haven't even seen it know who Gordon is. He's one of those names that if people were to list a character that isn't Thomas, most people, I think, would probably say Gordon, if not Percy. But I think Gordon's
Gordon knows. Yeah, but I just love everything about him. He's definitely my favourite. I think again, like I said, it was Duck for a while, but Gordon for a while just topped him. I think he a bit like James. He's great in every season he appears in. Even if he's a bit inconsistent, he's still great. He's still entertaining to watch. A lot of his shenanigans I enjoy. I like how he's got a subtle sense of humour as well. I like that. He likes to stir a bit of trouble, I've noticed.
Yeah.
In certain times, like taking advantage of like Sir Handel and stuff.
Yeah, I thought you suggested referencing that.
Yeah, he's not all sort of serious and big, and he comes across as like sort of leader of the engines, if there had to be one. He's the most authoritative
out of all.
Yeah, and I like the dynamics he has with Thomas, James, a lot of the characters. Like I said, he bounces off a lot, or more accurately, let's say, a lot of the characters bounce off him very well, I think. Yeah.
It's very
definitely my
pivotal, to other characters.
Yeah. I think that's about everything. I could probably go on about more, but that's all the main stuff. So yeah, my number one.
I think it's a solid number one pick, and I understand that even though he didn't make my top 10, I agree with everything you said, and I see why you like him. It's just, I don't know. Again, as always, characters I like better. But it's the point I made before. I could have a number one character in any given thing, whether it's Thomas or whatever franchise. My number 10 character I could technically like almost just as much as my number one character. Just because there's 8 characters in between, that doesn't mean that it is miles worse than number one. It just means that they're so close together. It's very hard to quantify how much you love something, but if you have to do that, if you had to quantify it, you do so via a list. So you have to put one or the other. So sometimes it's neck and neck. So they're basically, some of these characters are neck. They're so close, but so it doesn't mean number one is always miles ahead of number 10. It's just there's too many good characters. So even though Gordon isn't on my list, I still like the character. I still appreciate what he.
Like I was saying before, like I do like Henry a lot, but he just gets a lot of the time. I don't talk about him much because he's overshadowed by how much I like Gordon, and they obviously kind of mirror each other.
Yeah.
In ways.
I get you, but I'm kind of the opposite in the sense that to me, Henry I know what you mean by Gordon over. If we're speaking objectively, I kind of know what you mean where Gordon overshadows Henry, because he does in the series. But I have to say that I think that I think part of Henry's appeal is that he's an underdog. You know,
Yeah.
I like that Henry's an underdog, and in terms of character, not talking about the show itself, I kind of think that Henry overshadows Gordon for me, because I think he's visually more striking, and I just think he's just more interesting and more what's the word I'm looking for? A bit more layered. But that doesn't mean I don't love Gordon. I still do. He's still a great character. But my number one pick is one that we've already spoken about, but I didn't go into it too much because I knew that I was going to have to talk about him or them at number one, and that's Donald and Douglas, because it's very, very hard to pick a number one for something like Thomas when there's so many strong characters. But I asked myself, if I could have like a replica, like a proper replica of just one of them, who would it be? And I'd say, you know, it'd got to be Donald or Douglas. Now, you mentioned earlier that out of the two, you probably prefer Douglas, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I prefer Donald, which is strange. I think I had the Ertl of Donald first, but the reason I love them is, honestly, again, it's semi-superficial. They are written well, and they're good characters, and they're just kind of, they're good support characters, I find. But I will say that it is largely superficial because they just look so good. And like I said, with my number 10 entry, which felt like 5 years ago now, talking about that, when I talk about Mavis, you know, I like black locos, and I like the sort of realistic aspect. And like you mentioned, I'm so glad they didn't go with the blue livery. I have to say, they're such strong characters. And unlike Bill and Ben, who are basically carbon copies of one another, Donald and Douglas's personalities differ a little bit more. You know, I noticed that Donald, I don't know, Donald seems somewhat more apathetic than Douglas. Douglas seems a little bit more, I don't necessarily feel like there's a leader of the two, but I don't know. I feel like maybe Douglas seems a little bit, I guess because of the whole escape thing, Douglas seems a little bit more sort of, you know, more leader, like has more leader type qualities. What's that, sorry?
I say Douglas seems more headstrong and Donald seems more easygoing.
Yeah, I'd say that, yeah. But, I mean, my favourite episode, as I mentioned earlier, is Escape. And Douglas is the main character of that episode, which I thought was really interesting. I am kind of annoyed that Donald never had his own episode. Now, people kind of say, well, Donald's Duck is his episode. It's not really, is it? I know he's in the title, but it's more of a Duck episode. But it's the closest he got to his own episode, and I do like it. But it's annoying that whenever there's a chance to heavily feature one of them, they always seem to go with Douglas, which I'm not that keen on that they do. I'm not keen on the fact they do that, but I would have liked it that they did at least one episode where Donald, like, I would have liked an Escape equivalent with Donald as the main character. But it is what it is, and yeah, I think I got the Ertl Donald like a long time before I got Douglas, so instantly I was kind of more drawn to Donald anyway. But way back when, I think the season 3 was the first first Donald Douglas episodes I saw. I didn't know there was 2 of them because I don't think you really see them together in season 3. So I just thought it was one character. So yeah, I just always thought it was just Donald, and then I realized there was another one, and they were twins. So I thought, oh, Donald and Douglas. But yeah, I love them for many reasons. They got great voices. You know, if we're talking about Michael Angelis, I'm not going to talk about George Carlin because I do not like George Carlin's voiceover at all. I think Donald and Douglas is arguably one of his worst voices that he does. People say it's good. It is not. It's not at all. It's horrible. Whereas Michael Angelis' Scottish accent is hardly spot on. It's actually quite hilarious, but it suits them and they still sound good. Whereas George Carlin didn't. I like all the episodes where they're central characters and even episodes where they're supporting characters. And in fact, they're the reason I like the episode Thomas Goes for Breakfast?
Yeah, comes to breakfast.
Thomas Comes to Breakfast, yeah. It's their little, when you hear the start-up of their theme, you know, the Scottish drums and, you know, the bagpipes, and you think, oh, here they come. That's kind of a badass moment. You know, they're quite literally pulling them out of the mess. Yeah, just that one of many reasons I love them. I know we've been talking for about what seems like 2 hours now, so I'm probably losing my train of thought a little bit, but yeah, Donald Douglas definitely deserved pick, and I think it's so hard to pick someone, but after all this time, I kind of realized that aesthetically, like it decided this a while ago, aesthetically, Donald Douglas just take the cake. Now, I know there's more to a character than looks, but I strongly believe that appearance is so much of a character. And I think when it comes to Thomas characters especially, because after all, you know, they are locomotives. I feel like they're locos first, characters second, machines first, then personas. So, and Donald and Douglas, again, kind of proved this with me, whereas I like them mostly because of their aesthetics. And I think when it comes to a show about locomotives, whose sole appeal is the visual aspect, it makes sense that my number one characters would be the ones that I think are aesthetically the most pleasing in the entire thing. So yeah, that's my very long-winded explanation, and you know, I probably didn't explain that very well, but yeah. So for me, number one, Donald and Douglas, and I think is a deserved number one spot. That's tough going.
Yeah,
a list like this, that's hard going.
Yeah, another thing I want to add about them, I forgot to say when it was my turn to talk about them, but I think those two look the best out of all the characters in snow. Those two look the best traveling in the snow.
Yeah.
Something about their black livery just kind of like
contrasts it nicely.
Yeah, they look great in the snow, especially when they travel one in front, the coach in the middle, and then the other one facing the other way.
I always love that. Yeah. And we got to talk about their theme. It is one of the best things. I think it's probably my favorite theme out of all of them. Probably
top 3.
Yeah, I think for the longest time it was my favorite theme, but I guess we kind of just spoiled the top 10 theme video. But because this is the most character analyses are kind of like the most in-depth thing you can talk about Thomas, I guess, and we went through quite a lot of characters, like near enough 20 characters between us. This is probably the longest video we're ever going to do, so I think future top 10s will probably be smaller, but this is our first proper video, so you know. What do you want from us? No, but we did say right from the offset that this isn't going to be your conventional kind of video. It's not going to be like really professional, well edited with, you know, great visuals. You know, I'm just using a phone to film this. It's literally just meant to be a more natural conversation. It's more sort of a discussion, you know, the kind of thing that people listen to when they're trying to go to sleep. No, but we do hope you've enjoyed it. Do you have anything to add, Thomas?
No, just obviously we'd appreciate any subscribes and likes and shares and views to you know, boost the channel up a bit, because we've got a lot more coming in the future. But we hope I mean, this is a big hope, but we hope that you stayed around for all this, made it to the end. But yeah,
if you get that concentration span, because even I fall asleep when I hear my voice.
Yeah.
But no, thank you for watching. As I mentioned in the previous video, it is possible that we will edit at some point just to make it a little bit more cohesive. Who knows? I don't know. That's not my job. That's his job. He's the man that does all this. Now I'm pointing upwards because on my screen he's above me. I don't know how it is on yours, but yeah.
Yeah.
Thomas is the man that sorts all that out. I wouldn't have a clue. He's the brains of the operation. I'm just the big gob. But yeah, thank you for watching, and yeah, I hope you got something out of it. Anything, you know, let us know your top 10s in the comments if that's something you're interested in doing, and yeah, hopefully we'll have some more sort of streamlined videos in future.
Yeah. Okay. Right. See you in the next one.
Yeah, take care. Thank you.